Tatau i ngā pia me ngā korua i te wāre. E a tērā moe a, te moe a, te nokotari, mai te aro. Etu, kauni hera tēnā. Te hiwara kia hiwara. Te hiwara ki tēnei tuku kia hiwara. Kahumona te manu, i runga o matawhau. Ai te Arawa, te Tatau te Arawa, te hara tēnei nei ki te kaupapa. Tēnei te whare runanga, tēnei te whare kaunga, tēnei te whare e runanga e te kaunga. Ia ha, Eira e te taru. Taru e te kanohi. Kia koe Mariana. Kanohi o te Arawa, a poa i nei. Kia koe Jude. Kei ngā pai rau. E moana o te Arawa. Hara mai ki tēnei. O tātou tēnei wā. Tātou tēnei. Eira hara mai. Tātou. Pena nei rātou tātou pepe. Pepe o tūpara. Pepe o pererika. Pepe o hima. Reira, ka tika. Me kai mai tātou i tēnei wā. Ki te paka tutuki te āguatanga i ki nā e koe e te tau. Kia tupu ai te mato. I roto i ngā tau. Kia rātau ko whetūrani. Tau ke te maha o matari. Neira te kaungi hera. Ngā roto moana, o roto o Rotorua. Me te reo arohe, o mai te Arawa, o tau mai nei. Honore e kororia ki te atua e maunga rongo ki te mata. Aro pai ki ngā tanga. Ngai e te atua e ngā kororia. Tēnā aki.
Tēnā koe tuatahi kei te mihi mātou ki a koe kingi mō tō mihi me tō karakia i tēnei rā. Ngā mihi nui ki tō tātou whānau, o tātou hō, te tātou o te Arawa, ngā mihi nui ki a koutou ko tai mai tēnei rā. Also want to acknowledge those who are joining us by Zoom and also the apologies that we do have, which is Councillor Waru and also Councillor Maxwell. Councillor Maxwell will be joining us shortly, he's just taking a Zoom. But it's a pleasure to come together again with Te Tatau o Te Arawa and of course go through a very important not only document but also a presentation, I believe, around what the vision is for Te Arawa and the Te Arawa 2050 vision. As you know, we are setting our long-term plan and our vision for Rotorua for the next 10 years. It's a really important piece of mahi, it's really important work for us, and so we do appreciate your time and your thoughts at this stage before we get into the proposals that we will form our consultation document to the community. So if I can give you a real brief just on where we're at in the process before handing over to you. So what we have had, and it's quite different this time around, we are trying to not only show more transparency but also bring the public along on the journey as well. So we have had 4 publicly open workshops. They have been recorded and live streamed, in which we've had like a 101 session where we cover with the 4 priority areas of council: economy, housing, community and also infrastructure. And at the start, a real 101 on what is a long-term plan and what's council's role in determining the vision and the projects that we will invest in over those next 10 years. So those are available on the website. We have had a visioning session with this council as we start to determine what the vision for Rotorua will be. That's still in draft now, so it's quite timely that we're having this discussion with you. And then following this, we'll actually go into developing the proposals. So our executive team have been following us on this journey. They've been hearing some of the feedback, some of the questions from elected members. They will also, we do have Gina Rangi and also Una Hopkins here. And we do have, our staff would be following the live stream, and they are very aware of the Te Arawa 2050 vision as well. So they will be helping to formulate proposals that will come back in the second phase, of which will then be what are the things that we propose that we wish to invest in or do a little bit differently for the future of Rotorua. So that will be phase 2 that we'll be going into in the next week or two. So again, we really appreciate this time. We thought first we could hand over to you to share a bit with us, and then if you're happy to, we can open up for more of a discussion, and then perhaps even give a little bit of an update on where we're getting to with our vision, although that's still being collated, but just delving a little bit more into when we have those 4 priority areas of housing, community, infrastructure and economy, what does that mean when we look at that over the next 10 years? So without further ado, it's a real pleasure. We'll hand over to you, Te Taru, and also Jude, perhaps. But thank you very much for being here.
Tuatahi, he mihi ana ki a koe tarangatira kingi mo tō tātou, mo tō mihi me tō whakaaro ki a mātou i tēnei, ki a tātou i tēnei rā. Me tō karake hoki, kei te mihi o te ki a koe tarangatira. Te marae kura, tēnā koe, me koutou hokinga me mo te kaunihiro o ngā roto o Rotorua, kei te mihi o te ki a koutou, me koutou hokinga kai tautoko e haramai nei i tēnei rā. Tō rere tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, you were very pleased to be able to get to this point where we can share some light on the Te Arawa Vision 2050, because it is such a fundamental and important document for Te Arawa. It says who we are, it talks about who we were, who we are, where we've come from, the value propositions that our tupuna left with, and how we carry those through into a modern world, the world we live in now. And we see an appropriate infusion of these values is something that captures everybody. If Te Arawa rises with the tide, our view is that so does everybody, because our values are pictured around well-being of people, culture and place, and we all belong. So with that said, I'm going to take you through a bit of a snapshot journey through our vision document. We have completed it. It's in both te reo, full in te reo, and in English as well. And hand on heart, as I go through this particular document, you'll see the process we've been through, in a sense, the mandate we've achieved with this document and how valuable it is as a framework to consider how partnerships may exist within the construct of value that our people have shared with us and we share with you. So that's it. Can we have the first slide, Jude? While that's happening, I can, oh, there it is there. Yeah, I just wanted to give a brief historical background so there's some context here around where we've been post-1880. So, you know, prior to colonisation, we obviously, were hapu and iwi, we considered ourselves, we are the tangata whenua, governed by our own sense of chiefliness and self-determination. Our hapu and iwi are important entities in our life. So we didn't sign the treaty in 1840, although later on we did. There were a number that did sign it, but however, we did participate with the colonial troops of the time, and we did join forces as need arose, and some might have labelled us kupapa. I've heard that word said before in my journeys, but we weren't. You know, actually we were just simply strategic in the way we worked our space. But nevertheless, there was pressures of the Native Land Court, and we witnessed a lot of land being sold as we participated in our processes with our newfound people who came to the shores. In the 1880s, of course, you're familiar with the Fenton Agreement, which was signed. Ngāti Whakau were prominent in that particular space, and when it was decided to form a town council, There were 3 seats, from my understanding, original seats, of which one of those was awarded to a Ngāti Whakauē seat. Now, I may have that wrong, it might be 2, but what I've sought the information from it was 1, but nevertheless, we had a roll on there from Ngāti Whakauē. But in late 1800s, there were changes in the council structure, and that seat disappeared. So that's a little bit of snippet of the history. If I fast forward to 1993, you'll see that at that time, there was a standing committee formed. I'm very connected to this particular time because I was the director of TPK, Te Puni Kōkiri, at that time, and we facilitated the conversations around the standing committee formation, of which Reverend Manu Bennett was key in that particular conversation. And so a standing committee was formed to strengthen a relationship between council and Te Arawa, council and Māori. Te Arawa did express a willingness to come together and to participate in discussions around issues that affected Te Arawa. And at that time, it was a groundbreaking model in 1993. Next slide, please. Okay. It did continue on for the best part of 9 years, but effectively, in my language, it was a nihilmore, it lacked teeth. It didn't have much push and shove. It got overtaken really, in many respects. And in 2002, however, the Local Government Act was introduced, which increased the responsibilities of engagement with Māori. So fast forward again to 2009, there was concerns expressed by the Standing Committee again that they weren't being listened to, and so there was some tensions there. And in 2012, this came to a bit of a head when the council when the Ngāti Pēkehā, actually, for the Rotorua sewage scheme, took council to court, to the Environment Court, and they won. It cost the council over $2 million in that particular process of cost and time. So with that said, there was a little bit of a change in thinking that something needed to be done. So there was an audit, a review carried out in 2013, and on the Standing Committee and the options that might be more appropriate for the time. In 2014, a number of you would have remembered the release of a Vision 2030 for the council, and Te Arawa as a new partnership model were prevalent in that particular conversation and space. You can see it right through the document. And in 2015, the council decided that, okay, Te Arawa, you come up with a model, you take it out to your people, you bring it back to us, and we'll have a good conversation around this, and we'll draw on submissions from the public to see what they think. 2015, this was completed, and Arapeta Tahana actually led out this particular process around our different Maraean people. There were over 2,000 submissions that were made, and I was certainly one of those who provided a submission here in this particular room. 1,000 of those approximately were from Te Arawa and 1,000 from everyone else. It was a very tense time, I'll leave it there. And it was, but what I will say, to Te Arawa's credit, and it shows you the strength of unity, they didn't buckle, they didn't get distracted, and they stayed true to the course of a partnership. And that document and that partnership was then moved and approved by council. So it came into force. So on 18th of December 2015, at Tamati Kapua, we signed off on the partnership agreement. And in the front row there, you'll see the 14 elected members, and I'm in the middle there with the then Mayor Steve Chadwick. I was elected as the inaugural chair for Tatau Te Arawa. On each side, you've got Sir Toby Curtis on one end, and you've got Monty Morrison, I think, on the other end. We had a pretty full house, and it was quite an exciting time for Te Arawa. And if I may read out the purpose of this, as an understanding in the document we signed, together we gain understanding and reach our highest goals. This agreement embodies the intention of Te Arawa and Rotorua Lakes Council to establish an enduring partnership which creates a future that benefits the community as a whole. And I emphasise that this was not just for Te Arawa. We have a firm belief that if Te Arawa raises itself, then everybody else rises with it, and we share the moment and the glory of that particular relationship. So that's a bit of the backdrop. And of course, the next slide, those are the 14 elected members, and this was quite unique. 14 people go, whoa, that's a lot. But we needed to be able to cover the bases in many respects. So we had a kōweke, one, that was Fred Whata. We had iwi and hapu members selected from 6, and there were 6 selected from iwi and hapu. Ngāti Whakauē, in recognition of their founding gift of the township and their presence as mana whenua for Rotorua. Whakauē had 2 on there, of which Kingi was one of those. Land trusts and corporations, we had 2, on their Pan-Tribal, which was the Te Arawa River Iwi Authority represented in that space, Eugene Berryman Camp, and Rangatei too. Young Mauri Kingi, and who was the other one, Jude? Nahuia Ahona Paki. No, Paku, yeah, Hono Paku. That was a group. Now, I get asked by one of the elected members of council at the time. I remember this very clearly. You're no longer a council member, but he said, "Oh, do you think that the group will be able to get itself, around the table and be able to exercise its abilities?" I did say very, very cheekily, I guess. Well, we've got a couple of master's degrees and a couple of business degrees. We've got environmental qualifications and degrees, yeah, I think we could do all right. And I said, oh, but the biggest thing we've got is that we at Te Arawa have a love for our people, our culture and our place. And that was the commitment we gave. So, with that said, it wasn't too long, 2016 at the Local Government New Zealand Awards down in, I think it was Dunedin, might have been Christchurch, where that piece on the right-hand side of the screen, that purple piece of glass, was the Supreme Award for gift made to Rotorua Lakes Council for the partnership, reflecting the partnership and the value of it. So it was a Supreme Award. And by the way, we won it for 2 more years as well. On the left-hand side is the Patuparawa that sits over there. Somebody loved it so much they picked it up one day and took it away. It found its way back. But that was gifted as well. It was carved by Lewis Gardner, and it was gifted by Tūharangi, and in honour, actually, and reflecting the honour of Mauri Ora Kingi, and what he meant to the council and the work that he gave, the tireless work he gave in terms of the cultural advice at the time. So it was meant to represent the Mauri of the partnership, the coming together, the spiritual connect of all of us in this particular partnership. So really, that's the partnership that was launched. We had 2 members on the strategy policy, 2 members on the monitoring and operations, a member on the RMA committee, which existed at the time, which is Gina Mohi. And we also had members included in the Executive Officers Committee group, and also a couple on some of the other council committees. So we were active. The challenge in that space was always that our members had full-time jobs. And it was always a challenge, but we always had a person around that table, and a reflection on the same person that asked me, do you think you've got the ability to connect? He made statements around this table that he was really impressed by the inputs of the members of Tatau when we needed to. And Rawiri was one of those, Eugene Berryman Camp, Anna Morrison in the earlier days, and of course Patawa Basini Tuli, and others have been part of it. They gave their best shot and attended, and when they couldn't attend, and they were very well briefed by our Manahotu over here prior to the meetings around things, so they came here prepared, even though there might have been 1 at the time or maybe 2 when they could. So all I'm putting out on the table is that they did create value, in my view. There was a respect there. So with that, one of the things that we had on our agenda was Te Arawa 2050, and was something that we also indicated clearly to the council that we'd developed. A very, very important position statement around Te Arawa. What was our vision for the next 30 years? I have to say to you, council's was 2030, ours was 2050. So we're basically looking further out and thinking, well, we want to lay the plan, an intergenerational plan that made sense to us in terms of the timelines. So we started with a blank canvas, and next slide, Jude. Yep, next one. And when you look at that, this wasn't something that was just started by individuals putting themselves around the table. This was 16 of our Te Arawa entities came to the party. They were around the table. They formed a working party. They formed a working party to input mātauranga Māori, to look at where we've come from, all of the values of our tupuna, bringing them forward. They looked at the setting reference groups on different topics and matters, but they came to the party. When you look up that, it's very rare that you'll get that level of connection, or that level of hierarchy coming together. So truly, a Te Arawa entity voice. And those entities covered and connected with many of our hapu around our jurisdiction. So, it's never ever perfect when you're trying to consult and get everybody in the room, but that's about as perfect as you can get it in the context of a starting point. So that said, next one. This is the level of reach, and you may not be able to read it that clearly, but you can see from February to December 2019, just to read some out, 14 heads, heads up hui with our iwi, 41 rangatahi surveys. I'm just picking some out, 124 koeke moi or statements about what they thought, 100 Te Arawa leaders survey around, so there's all of these things. We had social media connections, we had videos, and so on. 18 months later, we came back with a final document that had been through drafts, that had been through connections. And the next slide, Jude. And there we are at Tapuia in July 2020. Of course, there was a COVID before that, but as soon as the COVID was over, we took the opportunity in the gap in between to actually launch it at Tapuia. And it was a great day of celebration for us. And, Councillor Maxwell was there, he wouldn't mind me saying, but he was so excited he had a bit of a, he had to go out and get some medical help. But let me just put it this way, it was a great day for our people, because this is very rare when you see the level of input. You might look at Ngāi Tahu, they came together, they had 18 rangi whakatupururanga, and you might have looked at Tainui, the Kingitanga. You might even look at Tūwharetoa, who have their Rikinui. With us in Te Arawa, we do have many chiefs, not too many Indians, so it can be quite challenging sometimes to actually get us collectively together. But mai makatui ki tongarero, the Te Arawa Waka are a confederation of tribes. And what we've endeavoured to do in this particular space for Tatau o Te Arawa is to harness that space within our jurisdiction, within our district. But this vision actually goes mai makatui ki tongarero. This is a vision for Te Arawa Confederation of Tribes. But in that, we are the takere or the hull of the waka. The prow of the waka, the bow of the waka is in Makatu. The prow of the waka is in Makatu, the bow of the waka is in Tongariro, and the takere of the hull is here, in the Waiariki. So I'm going to play this next video, if you can play it, because this is a very, very interesting impression or artistic expression of who we are, where we've come from, and our journey. Can we play the video, please? Niohaki o Haumai Tawhiti was the father of Tamiti Kapua, and he had some of his brothers on the canoe. Haumai Tawhiti did, but he was a high tohunga of his own, and he farewelled them. And in that farewell, he issued a number of incantations, a karakia, a number of comments about how strong we must remain. And so when that video comes up, hopefully we'll be able to see it in very artistic form, what it is. Is it able to be played?
Haumai Tawhiti admonishes his sons to leave from Hawaii and find new land, new life, strive for peace. He leaves them with his words of encouragement. Tamate Kapua embarks for Aotearoa. These are part of Haumai Tawhiti's words as a reminder to his descendants to overcome, to find peace, and strive to do and be your best.
Mai te whiwhia, mai te rawea, tūro parea tangaroa. Bind all in the world of light to the world unseen. Become one with the movements of tangaroa. I te ororo, I te oromia, I tuki ai koe, I tatai ai koe. The fashioning and rubbing, the to and the fro, moulding you. O I kiri o tangaroa, o I tere te waka nei, tere a ngaia. Oh, to the surface of the ocean. Oh, ensure the safe passage of this canoe, the sailing to be direct. Tūtaki ki tēnei mānuka, tūtaki ki tēnei ngahoa. Overcome all obstacles faced, overcome any barriers witnessed. Tupu te mahara, tupu ki roto, kia hono koe ko te hono tawhito. Let it grow, the thought within, to bind with the antediluvian. Pūrea o taringa, kia turi a kia hoe. Koe whakarongo koe ki te kōrero iti. Ko te kōrero iti, ka tahuri nā ko te hau ai tū. Cleanse your ears to be deafened. Refrain from hearing things insignificant. Such things will guarantee nothing but calamity. Ki hai koe te kanohi I titiro. Ko te taringa te whakarongo. Let your eyes see not, and your ears acknowledge not. O tama, o tia, o oro, o hei, o maka. E mau koutou ki tai, ki tai, ki tai, ki noho. Waiho he huhu, he popo, he hane hane. E ai te mate kia mate tarawhare. Go to the new land and forever live in peace. Let old age be the instrument of death, the death of honor. Mehe mea ka mau ki tai, ki tai, ki tai, ki tū. Ka mau tonu ki riri. He puia. He hāngina. E kore e roko hanga e koutou. E kore ai te mate. Seek not the path of the war god too, for he fills only the earth oven of remorse. Your death will be tainted and young.
Call your cable company and cancel your subscription. This new groundbreaking...
Yeah, that's not part of the presentation, but never mind. As an interlude. Hey, look, that's the ohaki and the value propositions, the thoughts that reflect where we've come from, who we are, and our intent is to basically face all of the challenges that are before us. What's important in this space is people, our culture and place. And that, you know, like I said before, if we rise, that's been said here, rise with the movements of the land and the sea, we will succeed, as will everybody else. And as I look around in Te Arawa, and I look around, and I mentioned this before, the land base that we still have, the population we've got, with the economic drivers that we've got at the moment, I'd like to suggest and reinforce that with this particular ohaki and what we're endeavouring to do, we are more than a stakeholder, we're more than an interested party. We like to reflect partnership in its truest form, as reflected by Haumā Tawhiti and the challenges he put before us. So, next slide. Okay, I've only got about 5 minutes left in here, but I thought this was the essence of why we feel so passionate about this particular document, why we hold it very dear to us, and why we believe it's the ideal framework when referencing partnership. How can we not reflect what this document imposes upon us? So I'm not going to go through all of this. There's the waka, you know, mai makatu ki tongariro, and it says there the kei o te waka is a makatu, which is the prow, the bowels in tongariro and te tākere o te wakas here. And we are right in the middle of the waka. So basically, and that's the jurisdiction. Next slide. I won't go delve too much on that. So that's us, Modi 2, Modi Oro, Te Arawa Air. And these are this is what we hold our heart on hand and say what's important to us. I reflect in there that as humans, he tangata, we are really, really important to each other. And that's how we want to live. We brought the treasures of Hawaii with us. And those are the treasures of an oral tradition that actually reflected and balanced environment in all things. When you think about that, and you think about our creation stories of Ranginui, Papatūānuku, and Te Ao Marama, the world of light, it's in that world of light in which the guardians of the realm, we intermix, we connect, and we balance with environment. So as we take, so we receive. That everything is done in a sense of reciprocity and balance. And it is said that we were people who fought all the time. I would argue that we're the ultimate accountants. If you didn't create the balance, if the balance wasn't there, you set the balance right. And there was ways of doing that. When the balance was set, kei te pai tērā, you get on and work and continue on. And that's what happened. And of course, we constantly look for that balance today, that balance of reciprocity. And a partnership, to me, is one of reciprocity, give and take, one of balance and counterbalance, obviously looking for the pathway to the common good. And I think our document is very strong in that respect in terms of this vision. Next one. Within that, all of these particular pathways for us, you know, we're talking about here, as I said before, we're talking about culture and the need for our culture to stay alive, stay well, be true to who we are. As my karawa, my Ngāti Porou side said, take the treasures of your ancestors to adorn your head and the tools of the Pākehā for your bodily sustenance and need. Meaning exist in a contemporary society, adjust yourself, but never forget who you are. That will hold you strong. It's about people, as I've always said. He hata me nui o te ao, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. It's about place, our place, a place we can all enjoy together. It's about enterprise and economy. And as we go through all of these, this vision statement and where it articulates at the end is what we intend to do, using the karakia and the phrases that were given by Haumai Tawhiti to exact or exemplar what these mean in our journey by establishing half a dozen po that also reflects enterprise and economy. Where do we want to be? What do we want to do? Technology and innovation. How are we going to set ourselves in that and grow our capacity in a changing world of technology? How are we going to get our young people to still connect to who they are, yet embrace technology and advance our people around technology, which is a real problem for all of us, as we know, baby boomers in particular, a bit worried about how technology takes us over. And if we lose some of the old ways of doing things face-to-face and everything else. But being able to embolden ourselves in that technology and innovation space for our next generations is really important. How do we embrace that without losing ourselves? Leadership and influence. One of the things that, as I said before, Ngāi Tahu, Tū Whare Toa, and also Tainui, you know, there's no doubt where the leadership evolves from. And the important thing is that connection to hapu and iwi is there, but the paramountcy is there, therefore being able to bring together. I'll just tell you this very short snippet. I was down in Wellington in one of my relations, Ngāi Tahu, and they attended a Ngāi Tahu Day down there. And this is the power of connectivity and collectivity. They had a Ngāi Tahu Day. She took her young baby, little baby, about 6 months old, ended up with a big box, a baby's pack with everything in it that a baby needs, with Ngāi Tahu all across, or kaitahu all across it, aoraki. And of course, and of course the preschool, she had a 5-year-old boy going to school, had a preschool pack, you know, backpack, drinking bottles, had their little whakapapa page and opportunity. They opened up an account for you, savings account, and if you put in $50, they'd put in $200 for your little baby. That, to me, is leadership. That is the impact of alliances and collectivity, collective power. And I was blown away, and I've actually done a few slides to show my te aroa whānau what it might look like. Because leadership is a big issue, okay? So really, that's the vision itself. And there is a number of, do we have the other slides on there? Yeah. Just very quickly, out of that sets the tone for Tatau in terms of our duty of care in the context of this particular document. So we've established a number of strategic priorities for us. I'm not going to go into detail around that. We can share it in open discussion. We've actually set up a wellness model, you know, a wellness compass So, you know, there's a model for housing that we've put up as well. Some people might argue, you know, is it Tatau's role to be involved in some of this stuff? Well, there are two mandated organisations. We acknowledge our hapu and iwi. There are two mandated organisations from Te Arawa. One is Tatau Te Arawa, the other one is Te Arawa Lakes Trust. We went through an election process with the electoral office, and we were established, signed off and established, as was Te Arawa Lakes Trust, under a treaty legislative requirement and arrangement, which is a little different. There's a lot more bearing from a legislative point of view. But for us, Tatau Te Arawa, we signed a document that could be a way of working with the council. So I just want to say that in our future, in terms of how we think it'll be within this framework of our Vision 2050. So te mare kura, kumutu taka kōrero I rungi tēnei matakitinga o Te Arawa, kia koutou, te kaunihera ngā roto Rotorua. So that's it in a nutshell. We have a lot on our plate, as you do. So, unless anyone else has a comment to make, Jude?
I'll just say a few words on behalf of the Te Tatau operational team that's here today. Jenny, Kayla, Ariana and myself. Ariana's the Housing Accord Coordinator. Kayla's my right-hand person. She's really covering across all the operational area of Te Tatau. And Jenny, of course, is our project lead and our engagement advisor. So that's Jenny's space. But what Te Taru presented, and the last few slides are really there purposefully to indicate that the strategic direction articulated in the Te Arawa Vision encompasses 30 goals across 7 strategic areas, and Te Taru put them up. And these last few slides are really just to indicate that Te Tatau's board, the whole strategic direction, once the Te Arawa Vision was formed by Te Arawa for Te Arawa, Te Tatau just facilitated that. And this was always an expectation in the partnership agreement the council wanted, but mainly for Te Tatau it was the people wanted this. So once the Te Arawa Vision was developed, the people wanted it, Te Arawa signed it off. Te Tatau's whole strategic direction is undergirded by the Te Arawa Vision, and hence the work program that myself and my small team deliver on, and there's some big elephants we're trying to eat within this work program, is all linked through to the Te Arawa Vision, and that's just a one-pager. I love one-pagers. I like simplicity. I like straightforward one-pagers, the board's strategic plan, my team's work plan, and then there's just a couple of examples of some of the more strategic work that my team's working on to deliver for my board, and there's Ruku and Kahutapeka Kiri, Mariana, our Deputy Chairperson, and Te Taru, who's leading out the partnership agreement negotiations. So just that's me. Madam Mayor. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you very much. At this stage, we'll just open up if there are any questions. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Worship, and through you. What a great presentation for the second time. I came to the presentation at the library, I think it was about 18 months ago, June, July, sort of 2022. And out of all of those, I tried to attend most of them as a citizen, not a councillor, of course, back in those days. I found yours to be the most uplifting and inspiring, and it's so good to see it again. One thing that really did grab my attention was, and I saw it, I think I might have been on your last slide, was the work program around establishing a Te Arawa Bank. How is that progressing?
Yes, that's been done under the auspices of Te Arawa Federation of Māori Authorities and has been on the go for the last, in terms of conversations, for the last 3 years. and the opportunity given that, you know, Te Arawa has significant entities, has significant, you know, financial opportunity other than putting in the mainstream banks into developing their own iwi bank. And that has been advanced. In fact, one of the banks, the community banks, has come on board. The issue really is, how do you develop an iwi bank, modelling Te Arawa first and foremost, being able to gather Te Arawa interest in there, to provide some term deposits in there that can be used for increasing access for Māori in housing. And attached to that is a capability program, not numeracy literacy, but teaching people attitudinal shifts and changes on how to behave and how to manage their resources and finances. That has progressed to a point that it's in the process of leading out now. It has issues around obviously securitisation, but being linked to a community bank means those securitisation issues that the Reserve Bank will demand are covered. So there is a bank within the bank, and over time, the expectation is it'll evolve into a bank of its own, with the opportunity for that to spread the love wider around the motu, and ultimately maybe a Māori development bank. Whereas, you know, the $4 billion that goes into mainstream banks each year and goes to Australia and does no benefit for many of us, particularly our Māori people accessing finances, maybe we can look to ourselves and that mana motuhake that we so desire, using our own resources to fund our own people, but recognising the plight that they have, raise the capability in an appropriate way. You know, yes, you can count, yes, you can read, but do you have the right behaviours and credit savings and so on? We have those clip-on. It's clipped onto the model, and the model has been engineered by someone who is highly respected in this field, who understands Māori. In fact, he's a local. He doesn't live locally, he has got a business in England. But I mean, the reality is that we're very, very pleased to have the capability to put this together, and a bank that sees the opportunity. We others, I will just talk about it and can't do it.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the presentation? Councillor Kiriopa.
Thank you. Tēnā koutou. This is a question for Jude. Councils have a history of referring to documents such as the Te Arawa Vision, the Housing Compass within council documentation, but not resourcing in any way to enable those documents to influence any actual implementation plans of any kind. What is actually needed, do you think, for Te Tatau to be able to use effectively, and for council, alongside council, to effectively use the vision and the housing compass to actually make a difference to the business of council and yeah, within the Rotorua community? What do you think is needed, Jude, please?
Yeah, it's interesting. Our Te Tatau submission to the future development strategy raised that point, Lani, absolutely, that what Te Tatau does not want is council or agencies picking up, it's like a tonga, and then referring to it, using it, putting it in an introduction of a strategy or a planning framework or a planning document, and then ticking a box. Look what we've done. We've actually, you know, we're actually delivering for iwi, or because we're referring to that document. And we were very clear in our submission that as the partner to council, as the Te Arawa partner to local government, that we did not want that to happen, and there wasn't the opportunity to work in a co-design model for the FDS for reasons, you know, just time frame, and things were truncated just because of the direction of government. But Te Tatau expects that to actually be able to embed and integrate and get practices underpinned by these, you know, long-term strategic approaches for our districts. It's actually co-designing. It's right at the beginning of any process, bringing, whether it's Te Tatau, it's, you know, bringing bringing us in or whatever in for that co-designing process. So then it is embedded and it is true and it is a heart thing. It's not just ticking a box and a legislative framework that gives lip service to, well, that's a bit of a waffly answer, Lani, but that's my whakaaro on that. And it is resourcing and it's not being afraid. Actually, I was talking to Tatau about what does being a good partner look like? And being a good partner is a bit scary. And I don't think many people really know how to partner. And Jenny and I have talked about this. Even in the iwi space, there's so much competitive behaviour that goes on. It's like I've got my bag of lollies and I've got the power, and we all go back to our default position. So I think it's constantly being vigilant. It's knowing what does it mean to be a partner, and then really meaning that and living by it, and being brave and courageous and trust. Oh, that's a bit of a long.
Yeah, I think if I can just add to that, because I totally agree with what Judith's saying. It's got to be lived. It's got to be given heart and soul to make this happen, and that's not a complex business. That's just making sure we talk to the right people, we engage the right people, and what is the right people, and who determines what's right. We're not looking for, we spent the first 6 years, and thanks to the council, $250,000, including GST. I always made that comment, and then it was subsequently approved to $350,000, I believe. And we were, as a charitable entity, we deemed upon ourselves to go raise the other amount of monies that we needed to operate, which we did do, and contributed to the Pūtea. The issue for us is, as I said, we're not looking for a hand out. This is all about a helping hand up together. What can we provide? We can provide connection, we can provide innovation, ideas, we can provide coordination, facilitation. We're not there to impugn, and I'll always emphasise this, the hapu, no way. The hapu have a really strong status in our people, and that's important that we protect that. But we see ourselves as a bit of a korowai where there are gaps that emerge, where are policy settings that need a global look at. We will be there. We should be there, and we should be there in helping to create solutions to that space. But where you've got individual connections, and you do, you have a lot of them. You have Ngāti, what's the one out with the sorry. We have hapu, who actually, Trevor's hapu, who have that rangiwewe. Sorry, mate, I was thinking about Ngāti Pigeo, but Ngāti rangiwewe with their water, and their tino rangatiratanga space there that is to be observed. Likewise, we have other conventions that are connected that the council have. We respect that. We'll only be there to support as and when necessary, or to add any support and help, but the doorway is always open. We're not closing that. But in the context of being able to have a global perspective of Te Arawa in this space, then we believe it's our role to be there.
Just while other people are thinking if they have any further questions, I just have a question around the strategies that you have in here as well. I know you touched very briefly on them, and I understand that you have your work program as well, but I just wonder if, given that this was a 2050 vision, if we were to think about what the next priorities are, and there's a great, I see in there around, there was also the Te Arawa housing strategy, which you've achieved. But if we look at the next 10 years, what would sort of be your priority areas in terms of strategy that you want achieved or accomplished? Because if we look at what this council, our top 4 priorities, economy, I see you have enterprise and economy, infrastructure, housing, and then also community for us is a strong focus on well-being and also community safety. So I just wonder if there's any sort of top priorities that you're looking at either right now or wanting to start or complete within the next 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, you might be aware that we've been working on an opportunity with Datacom and MB, and because of the political scenarios right now, things have been put on as everybody looks for the Pūtea. But we'd been working on that for several years now, since 2019. we got to a point where we were ready to sign a partnership agreement with MB to bring the likes of Datacom and the technological services to this space and building the capability, employment of our peoples here, and raising the capability and technology and being a hub for the development of that. That was Tatau Te Arawa in terms of improving capability in technology and innovation and looking at our future, next generation. That was something that could happen now. The other thing is then we're referring to the bank. Of course, Tatau has been connected into that banking idea. And again, it's raising the capability and ability, affordability, and raising the capability of our people to step up. These aren't handouts. This is about hand up and teaching our people the right practices, the right attitudes, the right behaviours, and creating a thinking of wealth, not poverty. A belief that they can do this, and those who do not think they can get a house can actually get a house if those changes are there and if we as entities participate. So that's another thing that we would be focusing on. The other thing is also about coordinating in the housing space. You mentioned the housing accord. We've been in the space of coordinating that with all of its challenges. Because there are competing interests in that space. Tania, as you'll know, that you're going to have, can be Ngāti Whakau-centric, or it can actually be out there as well, wider in terms of the jurisdiction that we have. So it's all of those things that we see ourselves as, by invitation, being able to provide a collaborative cohesiveness to it. Because at the end of the day, there is Te Arawa Lakes Trust and there's Tatau Te Arawa, and there are all the iwi hapu and the different entities. It's how we actually work in that space that acknowledges those entities and acknowledges the value of coming together, creating scale, so that we can move together. That is the big issue. And I think that, from my perspective, being on Tatau Te Arawa, being able to coordinate those types of alliances are really, really important. And in fact, when I look at the Housing Accord, it was Tatau that initiated the first wheeze at Tamete Kapua around this conversation. And we've initiated these discussions around Datacom when there have been competing interests in this particular space as well. So it's actually entering these spaces without fear and with the acknowledgement that you have a mandate to operate for better or for worse. And if it's for worse, then you're going to get run over the coals by your people. And those are the people who should do that to you. But other than that, carry on the job that you've been put up to do. So are there anything else, Jude?
Yeah, I'll just mention a couple of things, and I had a quick check-in with Jenny around this also. One of the pages, one of the slides we put up was the Te Arawa model for housing, and I suppose I'll just talk about a couple of key priorities that Te Tatau has been trying to move forward, but different challenges, and it is within that model for housing, and it's the whenua Māori area, which my board signed off on, was that Te Arawa would develop a spatial plan of the whenua Māori, and this would articulate all the aspirations of all, not just the big land blocks, not just the big usual suspects that are developing their land, but for the whole district, and it would be a spatial planning layer, and we would have iwi researchers out working with their whānau on the whenua, working with the land trust, actually capturing those aspirations and getting them into a spatial planning layer. That is one thing that is a priority for my team. The other one is the Te Manuka project that Tataru mentioned, and we've run into, and this has been a really interesting, talking about co-design, Lani, this has been a slow process of working with MB and working in a mana oriti environment, so getting the relationship built, and we're into the contractual part at the moment, and we've run in, of course, to October 2023, an election time, so that's been parked for 6 months, but it's a really exciting opportunity, and I'm hoping that the incoming minister that will work with MB will see the value of piloting and testing something really special and really exciting in that iwi space, of iwi employing, of creating jobs, of having a rākau whakatupu program running alongside it to develop people. It actually has got tentacles to deliver for the Rotorua community quite widely. So if council could move forward or integrate in any way those two major pieces of work, I would retire very happy instead of, oh my God, I'm out of here.
You know, Tanya, one of the things that Tatau can do, you know, it can get resources that the council can't necessarily get. We can be out there working with the other entities, which we do, and we've got a good reputation with those other entities. We act as an umbrella group as well for some of our groups that don't have structures, and we are a holding group for them and allowing them to seek resources, and then we administer those resources out to them. So we do that. But one of the things, if I may give you an example, you may well be familiar, Tanya, with the Waihi Estuary and the group that we've been working with, and on the regional council. The regional council was constantly pushing its nose in and wondering why things weren't working and how do we actually get Māori involved. In fact, they gave up getting Māori involved. What happened is that we ended up pulling the iwi together. When I say we, I stepped off and acted as an independent chair to pull the iwi together, and got to a conversation where there was a mana arguments about jurisdiction, and said, well, I think it's time you put your tyre house at the door and face one reality, clean up the estuary. We ended up with $3 million. And with the potential for $4 more million to clean it up. And the point is that the iwi are taking the lead, and the council are following and supporting with confidence that the team that has been put into that space can do the job, and that those people who have 800 years of unconnected, of this, of total connection all the time with that estuary, who got kai there, and the kai is now poison, can now find the solutions moving forward. And that was part of what we considered to be a real partnership of co-design.
Thank you. I did have one other question. I think that was very helpful. The other question that I had is one of the real strengths and the benefits of Te Tatau Te Arawa and the partnership was the ability to engage with Te Arawa, of which you've done an incredible job in developing the Te Arawa 2050 vision. I just wonder if you had any thoughts or ideas that could assist as we develop the next long-term plan for the next 10 years as council, and if there had been any thought, and there may not have been yet, we're all being really open-minded at this stage, into how we could work together and have your assistance to ensure that Te Arawa, whānau, hapu and iwi are accessing and submitting to our council processes. Our team worked incredibly hard to try to share the information about what we're doing and also encourage people to make submissions, but at times it can be really challenging to get people to submit. And one of the great things that I really appreciate about this council is that authentic engagement and communication is one of our top priorities, and doing that for and with mana whenua as well. So I just wonder if you have any advice or any thoughts on how we could work in partnership with engaging with all of our community as well, as we undertake this next exciting step for our Rotorua Lakes Council.
I think, one of the things as we're going through the review of the partnership, it is also what might the mechanism look like that imparts exactly what you're saying. How do we improve the quality and constantly improve the quality of the relationship in terms of the participation and the ability to create value? That's what we want to do. We want to create value. We don't want to be a tickle on the fence. We want to be there to actually deliver value to council and to our communities and to our people. And I think that's the point. I mean, I know that one of the things that's been raised, and of course we had our voices on Stratton policy, monitoring and ops, which are no longer there, but then what is something that can actually excite exactly what you're saying? And so it's revisiting a structural association, if you like, where those decisions can be cooperatively engaged in, where the information that you need is imparted and the support that we need in terms of the conversation, the support is reciprocity, I guess is what I'm talking about. One of the things that we operated at the Regional Council, and I hate mentioning Regional Council here because I'm not with Regional Councils as I'm sitting here, but I mean the reality is that we had a committee Māori, and one of the issues about, of course it was the first Māori ward in the country, 2003. Wasn't until 2016, and they decided that they needed to upgrade the relationship to a committee Māori. But the committee Māori was at a third tier level, and I came on in the first term, and we debated this, the need for it to be elevated, not to be as a subset of the committees, decision committees, but be alongside the committees, so that in fact you are imbuing the conversations across the board. So if you want to know what's happening in the Māori space, it goes across and not under, up, and then filtered and up. It goes across as a committee of the whole, which is what we are right now, which has really created a really great forum for the voices to come through. Of course, we have those treaty agreements that are there for the Kaituna and other places. But I mean, the reality is the conversations around those that aren't captured in that space are enabled and empowered. And that committee operates very well, you know, has its moments, but as a committee of the whole, it works and enables that conversation to happen. You know, it's not segmented, not square box, but shared. And therefore, everybody gets enlightened on the same page and then gets lifted up for the final decision. That's one thought. It's only a thought, but we're still in that process.
I suppose, Tanya, this comes back to Lani's question. And I think there are opportunities, and it's about co-designing, and it's about co-designing together what that looks like, and then agreeing, okay, that's something we can lead out, that's something you can lead out. That's, you know, it all comes back to partnering and being together at the right time, and then agreeing who's going to lead what out. I think that's an ideal opportunity right at the beginning of the LTP process.
Thank you very much. Were there any other questions? No? I think perhaps at this stage, would you be okay if I share a little bit about the outcomes that we've come to? Fantastic. I'll just quickly pull it up. So, as mentioned, we have had a visioning workshop at a high level of this council as well. That was the previous session that we've had before this one and before we head into the finalised proposals. And what we're really doing now as a council is we've got those 4 priorities that I've mentioned, but those are the priorities that we've set for the next 3 years. So how do we ensure that those priorities can set a vision, but also deliver on some key outcomes for the community across the next 10 years? So as part of that visioning process, what we are trying to get to are those key community outcomes that will be set into the long-term plan, which is basically the how can we guarantee and how can we measure if we've been successful in that long-term plan. It's not just about investing a financial contribution, it's ensuring that all aspects of our community, whether that's social, whether that's cultural, whether that's environmental, is also achieving the positive outcomes that we want. So we went through a bit of a session as a council, and we came up with basically 9 key areas that we wish to look at. As mentioned, the staff are still drafting that, and that's to come back in the next proposals. But at a high level, I thought I'd share with you just those areas. So in no particular order, one of the areas was around active. So ensuring like fit for purpose facilities, that our community is fit and healthy. Safety was another aspect. So community safety has unfortunately, we've been feeling this locally, but unfortunately we saw in the media and nationally they were putting a perception out there that Rotorua is not a safe place. And so community safety is not only important for us in all of our neighbourhoods across Rotorua, but community safety is also important as a world-class tourism destination, that our visitors feel safe and they have perceptions that Rotorua is a safe place too. So there's active and safety. The next one was respect for tangata whenua. So that was a key theme that came through, and looking at partnership, but also partnership in terms of not only decision-making and engagement, but unlocking opportunities, whether that's jobs, whether that's housing. So respectful tangata whenua was another one. Housing was, of course, one that's been a really big one for us. It's a big one for you too. And of course, when we have people who live here, we want to attract more people to live here. They do need jobs, so employment was a key one. And we can send these to you in draft and like the topics, but we'll also share with you once it is the community outcomes are drafted. So tourism was a big one that was quite prominent in our priorities for the next 3 years, but we still would like tourism to be a strong aspect of the next of our long-term plan, but also taking that into looking at, well, it's not just domestic and international visitors, but how can we make this a great place to attract events as well? So events, venues, and really being that #1 destination in New Zealand. Mauri Wai was also another one. So looking at Mauri Wai from a number of different aspects, whether that's healthy and plentiful water sources, or also enabling communities to take responsibly from our waterways, and then geothermal. Of course, we are well known for our spa and wellness, so Mauri Wai was one of them. Resilience was another one, another key outcome that came through. Resilience actually had a very strong environmental focus, but also around our obligations in council for civil defence and emergency management, and ensuring that our communities across our district are resilient to the environmental changes and unfortunately for the increasing climate change events too. And then finally was arts and culture. So ensuring viable facilities, the reo rua, which has been a strong focus of Te Tatau o Te Arawa, and just ensuring that there's vibrant arts and culture sectors here in Rotorua that do also help to support the multicultural community that we have here. So in quick summary, that was active, safety, respect for tangata whenua, housing, employment, tourism, Mauri Wai, resilient, and arts and culture, in no particular order. So those are the key outcomes that we've identified at this stage. As we mentioned, we are wanting to take our community on the journey, so as soon as we have that completed, we're very happy to share that with you, and then we'll also just continue to update our website as we go. But I think with those key outcomes, as we go into this next stage in terms of the proposals, you can expect that those will be the priority areas, although we haven't yet determined how or when we will actually achieve those outcomes. The key thing to note with the community outcomes going into the long-term plan is we stage them across the next 10 years. So it will be sometime within the next 10 years that we wish to achieve that. We are very mindful that we don't necessarily have the budgets to do all of it in the next year, but that's where we'll, as well as setting our long-term plan, we also, of course, have our priorities for the 3 years and then our annual plans, which just sets the context of how we make decisions and the timing of it. So those are just a really quick summary of our community outcomes. We have asked questions of you, but I wonder if there's any questions that you may have for us before we wrap up this session.
Have these priority areas come from your connection and community submissions and comments back, is it, or is it in-house statements?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It's safe to say that these were strongly influenced by our connections with the community, but of course the annual plan process that we had recently as well. We have had a number of different consultation with our community. We've also recently finished our future development strategy, and it's been very interesting seeing some key themes coming through all of those processes, even being mindful that only 1 year ago we were all elected to this table, and through the election process our community was very clear with us then on what some of those priority areas are too. So while the process of developing the community outcomes was internal, and remember this is providing our staff with the direction to formalise proposals to then take to community consultation, yes, they were largely influenced by what we've heard from our community. over the past 12 months.
Certainly the comments made, I hear it even from my colleagues across the way around the image of Rotorua, as you said, and it's not a nice one. You know, I think there's been a lot of damage being done to our image, and I suppose, you know, looking at I guess the short-term approach to that image, what is the key priority to reshape that image? You know, I mean, we all like to see it disappear overnight, but it's going to be hanging in here for quite some time. So what would be the council's first foray into improving that image?
Yeah, that's a good question. And as well as the long-term plan, what we have been quite clear on within the annual plan for the next financial year is that the community safety and also supporting tourism in a world-class to become, well, return to a world-class destination has been a priority. So those two will continue to be priorities as we stage in the next 10 years that. Some of the key things that we are already doing is we will shortly be opening up a community safety hub here in the inner city. So we are doing our best to find not only ways where we can put together a plan and a strategy, but also make tangible, visible results and differences for our community, and again the desire of wanting to do that in partnership and with others too. So to tackle the community safety issue short term, we do have a really good partnership with our local police and our Rotorua area commander, and it's through that partnership that we've been able to help to advocate for things like the return of the community constables, which we have, and we will have them alongside us at the Community Safety Hub. And we have had discussions with the Māori wardens to join us as well, and would look to get other neighbourhood support groups interested in, also not necessarily interested, they're certainly interested, but able to be a part of the short-term solution. I think my councillors remind us all the time that while those are short-term initiatives, there is a much longer-term issue in terms of addressing the causes of the crime that's occurring in our community, and this council is certainly interested in ensuring that all of our district feels safe, whether it's inner city, neighbourhood, or even our rural areas, as an example. But that's hopefully answered your question.
Tanya, I think you know, it behoves the work that Tatau does and Arawa Lakes Trust does and others do, that Arawa does come together to provide solutions around the problems that we've got, and that we exercise the resources that we do have. I'm very big on alliances and making sure that we get to a point where we sing off the same song sheet around core issues that we're facing, and we agree to come to the party as a collective, not as individual groups. We understand that the dynamics will always break loose every now and then. It can never ever be guaranteed. But the solution in terms of Te Arawa's participation, and I would argue for Tatau's role, is to be able to help support that collaborative approach, that approach where we exercise the collective resources of Te Arawa, both economic and people, and actually look to build the capacity. When I mentioned the issue about affordability for houses, we can build the houses when we put $500,000 or $600,000 tickets on them, and many of our people are going to get those houses. So then it comes to the question of how do we work with the other agencies who put up proposals or programs, and how do we exercise a model that actually co-jointly works on the capability building of our people. And like I said, this cannot be a handout, but it can change people's lives just by enabling them to believe they can get a house, and then being able to put in place the capability in building exercises to get them there. Because when they get there, there's no doubt their life has changed, and so will the lives of their children be changed. And then, you know, you're starting to make some headway. So I guess I'm just making a comment from Tatau's point of view, that if there's things that I believe we can be very much part of, is building that cohesiveness, even though it can be strained at times, to try and bring our people together. I'm not playing with just words here, it can be challenging, but I think in the heart and soul of our people that we want to make that difference, and that can happen when we are together. So I guess that's a space that I would like to think that Tatau and Te Arawa Lakes Trust and others can work on together, but definitely it's on the agenda. And I know there's thoughts out there in Te Arawa about how we can make that happen. I think we need to look closer to home around things like our vision here. What does it really mean before you impart on those types of journeys? We need to understand collectively where we've come from, where we are now, and what we want to do moving forward as a collective aspiration. And working with council is certainly part of that.
Thank you. And I love the thoughts of the collective aspirations as well, because we're all the same community and we serve all the same people, just in many different ways. So I do wonder, were there any final questions or perhaps any comments from anyone? Yeah, Councillor Barker.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation. Really enjoyed it. And I was particularly interested in the last bits about your work streams and that kind of thing, which I haven't seen an awful lot of personally. So I'd be quite interested to have a closer look at those if you're happy to share with them. Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much.
Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. Aloha mai for missing a portion of the meeting, and so my question or my comments might have already been covered, but I'll feel better if I know that I have brought it forward. One is, how do you feel with the partnership that was built up some 10 years ago for us to work together, a strong partnership, and you have brought forward some excellent visions already for us to consider over the long term, but deep down it's not only a question to you about how do you feel about the partnership, really it's a question to us too. How do we feel about the partnership? And I'll start off and I'll say, I think we should have had a smoother transition than what we've got now. It's almost taken a year to the election date where we're really talking about a partnership that should have been a lot smoother. But that's a start.
Yeah, I guess if we look at the past 7 years as a learning experience, you know, it hasn't been perfect. That's for real. So what are the lessons we can learn in there? I think one of the biggest lessons is being able to share in the right way, being able to be included earlier than later, and give validity to the input, so that you're not just following, you're part of that team moving forward. I think if we can proffer that situation more openly in the future, I think it'll go a long way to the 8 targets that you're looking at here. I know Te Arawa are a very, very important partner in this. When you dive into the economics things, when you dive into the social issues as well, when you dive into the capacity issues, when you dive into the fact that, you know, intergenerationally we're never going to go away, and yet there's a strong desire to improve. I think there are lessons in our past. Rather than grieving about things, it's about taking on board the fact that we need a closer attention to reciprocity, to being involved at the right time, in the right way, in the right place, not as a clip-on, but as a partner. And it's just that whole issue of partnership. You know, we're not looking at co-governments here. We're not even really looking, in my sense, as a sort of a co-governance. I think those words have got peppered a lot and strained a lot. I'm talking about a partnership that respects each other. And that reciprocity is important. And when we talk about manaakitanga, you know, for me, we're talking about mana enhancing practices. And that really comes from, if I give to you, you give to me, and we'll find the balance. I think that's really, really important. And if we can get to that space, then we have learned our lessons together. You know, and just by the way, Councillor Maxwell, I mentioned when we launched this in 2020 at Te Puia, you were so excited that people had to help you out the door. Sorry, mate.
Oh, fine.
We were sitting in the front row wondering what the hell was going on here, Trevor. We thought you were really, really going for it. Yeah. Anyway, I know you would. You're happy with. Wouldn't be so unhappy for me to make not fun of it, but it was nice to see you there and have you here and being where you are. So Kei te pai.
Tony Gill was sitting with me, he saved me. Kia ora, thank you.
Thank you. There appear to be no other comments or questions. Was there anything else from you guys?
Just the question of what's the next step? We'll carry on with our review. Just looking at you, Sandra, and as being on the review panel, we've got a meeting coming up soon where we can sort of work further through. I thought this was very helpful in the context of sort of getting, you know, councillors on board and our own board on board. And hopefully it'll add value to our conversation. I'm sure it will add value to our conversations we're going to be having with, was it Leah? With Leah, yeah, as the Independence Year on the 13th. No. Don't know, no more questions from me. Yeah. Thank you. He ngā mihi ki a koutou, e te mare kura me koutou, ngā me mo te kaunihira, mo te kōrero I rungo I te mahi ngātahi kei Wanganui, o te Tatau o te Arawa me ngā kaunihira o ngā Rotorua. Nā, kei te mihi atu ki a koutou. Kia ora.
Kia ora koe.
Ki rā koutou o te Tatau o te Arawa. Ka nui te mihi, ka nui te mihi. Tell me when will you... Sorry. It's just like give me a microphone and I'm like, wow. Nō reira, ko koe tēnā te taru. I roto I tō mahi whakapuaki. I roto I tō mahi whakawhariki. I roto I tō mahi whakatakoto kaupapa. Harei te mea mō te taru noi honei engari, te puari nei o te Tatau o te Arawa, te puari nau I hautū I tōna whānautanga mai. Nō reira ka nui te mihi hoki rā ki a koutou o te Tatau o te Arawa, kua tau mai nei I roto I tēnei rangi motu hake. Nei rā te mihi o mātau o te kaunihira ki a koutou I tēnei wā. E arei te mea he koutou I roto I tēnei kupu he tātau. I te mea no tātou te whapori, no tātou te kaupapa, no tātou hoki rā te aroha ki tēnei whenua me o na hapori, me o na iwi tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. Ko tāku, he whakakōpani tēnei āhuatanga ki te karakia, ko tāku, he whakawhai I ngā kai, kia kaitahi ai tātou. Nō reira me ino I tātou. Kia whakairi ake te tapu, kia wātea ai te ara, kia tūruki whakataha ai, kia tūruki whakataha ai, haumi e hui e, tai ki e. Nō reira nāwe te ariki I ho mai we nā kai, hei oranga mo te tinana whangaitia hoki o mātou wairua ki te taro o te ora, ko I hukaraiti hoki tō mātou kai whakaora. Amine. Kia ora tātou. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you very much. Thank you very much to everyone who joined us on live stream as well. We've got Councillor Greg there too.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
You did well, mate.
Thank you. And we'll now declare this closed. And if you'd like to join us for a cup of tea and also a bit of a kai. Thank you very much for your time today.
Good, thank you.